and I am on my black and brown brothers and sisters' side. Fight the good fight. You know that I am part of the resistance. Let's fight the power.
Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
Protests and anthems, yes, we chanting a movement of people. It's like we dancing to the ministry of, it's the energy of, in memory of them that we love. The trinity of the people, the peace, the power, the truth. We speak the powers even louder. We can say it blacker, we can say it prouder. A woman vice president that went to Howard. Now we talk helping black businesses, and our differences is magnificent. Bringing light to the boy where the prisons is. I was told good life is where forgiveness lives. The ascension is to leave what's left behind and feed the seeds with deeds that bless the mind, caress the mind, and question justify with you and God in time are best aligned.
Shine, flies, no time to waste while it's passing you by. Shine, flies, be patient, cause good things happen in time. We gon' get it right, we gon' get it right. We gon' get it right. We gon' get it right.
How can I be a better father, son, a better grandson, honoring Fannie Lou's?
You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and I'm your host and White House correspondent. I'm in touch, and so you be in touch. Be sure to follow me on all the social media platforms at Dr. Nii-Quartelai. All you got to do is type in Dr. Nii-Q, DRNIIQ. It's like a chant. Dr. Nii-Q, and there I am, fresh for you to follow. Also, if you haven't already, join the fun. Download the KBLA app to listen to us live or on demand, or simply tell Alexa to play KBLA Talk 1580. That's how Afro-futurists we are around here. And you can listen to us everywhere you go. Last but not least, subscribe to A More Perfect Union podcast. That way you'll never miss an episode. Now, we've had our friend, Darren Harris. He used to be chief of staff to then Congresswoman Karen Bass. Now he is continuing his servant leadership as the chief government and community affairs officer at St. John's Community Health. And they are engaged in a fight, a righteous fight, an important fight for healthcare for all. They have launched... They're part of a coalition that's launched a $2 million campaign across 6 congressional districts. In California, the Health Justice Action Fund is zeroing in on Representatives David Valadao and Ken Calvert, whose districts have the largest shares of Medicaid recipients among Democrats' top House targets in the state. Valadao has urged Republican leaders not to slash the program as caucus hardliners push for deep reductions. This campaign is at least the third of its kind in California this cycle, piling on similar efforts from the coalition Protect Our Care and Fight for Our Health. And so, shout out to the folks over at St. John's Community Health, the system of clinics in Southern California leading the pack. Certainly, there's a lot happening on the budget front, particularly efforts to protect the social safety net, principally Medicaid, which so many of our fellow Americans depend on each and every day. But now it's time for you to decide the good, bad, and ugly headlines of the day. We'll be talking a lot with our guest this hour, Dr. Jonathan E. Collins, from Columbia University, a professor over at Columbia University. We'll be talking to him about the Trump and Republicans' giant tax and immigration bill. There's a lot to unpack there. But for folks in California, this is a story that's all too familiar. Insurance adjusters are testifying that they were pressured to cut payouts after hurricanes. This story happening here in the nation capital. Washington Post reporting that storm victims and insurance adjusters appeared before a congressional committee today where they detailed what they said are aggressive tactics used by the insurance industry to limit payouts to policyholders after Hurricane Helene and Milton struck the Southeast just this past year. The hearing before the subcommittee of the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, it included testimony from not one, but two adjusters who work for Pilot Catastrophe Services. It's a third-party company employed by Allstate. They accused Allstate reviewers of doctoring their work, altering and deleting their findings to lower the final estimate, ultimately reducing the amount of money the company had to pay out in claims. This is a scenario that is all too familiar, and so we're glad that it's getting attention on Capitol Hill, but I'm not sure if we should be all that hopeful that what comes out of this committee, that anything that comes out of this committee will hit the House floor and have a chance of passing both chambers of the legislative branch and being signed by this president. You know why? It's because Republicans are much more interested in privatizing everything. Privatizing everything. Not too long ago, we were talking about about FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, and their efforts to dismantle that. And so we know how many of our fellow Americans depend on FEMA in times of need. And so if this administration is saying, y'all don't need FEMA, I don't know if we can bet on this administration holding insurance companies accountable for their tactics to limit their payouts. In other news, back at home in Los Angeles County, insurers are seeking to surcharge California homeowners for the LA County fire costs. You can't make this stuff up. The LA Times reporting that insurers are seeking to charge homeowners across California for some of the costs of the catastrophic LA County fires that the companies were burdened with when the state insurers of last resort needed a bailout. The California Fair Plan Association, with the approval of the state insurance commissioner, Ricardo Latta, they assessed its member carriers $1 billion on February 11th when the plan was swamped with thousands of claims after the January 7th fires in the Pacific Palisades, Altadena, and Sylmar. The plan operated and backstopped by the state's licensed home insurers said that it's made $2.75 billion in claim payments as of Friday and expects its cost for the fires will total $4 billion, which it could not cover with its limited surplus and reinsurance funds. And so now, under a policy that Ricardo Latta put in place last year that's being challenged in courts, insurers are filing applications with the State Department of Insurance seeking to surcharge their policyholders statewide for half the cost of that assessment. We'll keep you posted. We'll let you know what's going on. But, if you're wondering why you're having to stretch your money further and further, how is this happening in real time? This is how it's happening. And keep in mind that these catastrophic wildfires, these catastrophic disasters are happening with more frequency. Hurricanes and wildfires and tornadoes. And so our social compact with insurance companies may have to change. But change in whose interest? Oh, that depends on who's in office. That is just one piece of the conversation we intend to have with Dr. Jonathan E. Collins, Associate Professor of Political Science at Columbia University, when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. You are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and just in from The Guardian, breaking news that a federal grand jury has indicted a Wisconsin judge on charges that she helped immigrant avoid agents. A federal grand jury indicted Wisconsin judge Hannah C. Dugan of the Milwaukee County Circuit Court, who was arrested last month on allegations that she helped an undocumented immigrant avoid federal authorities. Dugan faces charges of concealing a person from arrest and obstructing official proceedings. This is a report coming in just now from the New York Times. The statement from Dugan's attorney after she was arrested said that Judge Hannah C. Dugan has committed herself to the rule of law and the principles of due process for her entire career as a lawyer and a judge. This is a developing story, but a highly unusual story. And to help us sort of make it make sense, we're joined with Assistant Professor of Political Science and Education over at Columbia University, Dr. Jonathan E. Collins. Welcome to the show, Jonathan.
Dr. Quartey, thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And, we love having you here on the show because whether it's breaking news or whatever is trending, you help us to make it make sense. It is unusual to see a federal grand jury indict a judge, particularly a circuit court judge, on allegations that she helped an undocumented immigrant avoid federal authorities. What do you make of this?
This is unprecedented behavior for a judge to be indicted for. Now, because when you're talking about a grand jury indictment, you're talking about one of the highest forms of prosecutorial action here. This means that the federal government is heavily invested in making sure that you are essentially given the highest level of priority or scrutiny for violating not state but federal law. So this is a big deal. And for a sitting judge to be accused of this, and if you follow the story even more closely, you start to see that there were a line of witnesses that were sort of attesting to the specific instances where they've seen Judge Dugan contribute to this act of supporting a migrant. It sounds, obviously it's much too early to speculate, but it sounds like there was a political motivation here. And if there's a political motivation, that's one of the things that you want to separate from sitting on the bench. And it's one of those things that speaks to the larger sort of political problem that we live in now, where a sitting president, can lead with his politics, where a sitting president, can engage in acts that extend and stretch beyond the duties of the position and not face any sort of scrutiny. And this is not to excuse Judge Dugan for what she may or may not have done here, but this is just to say that we're picking and choosing when we hold our officials to account for putting their politics on display with the backbone of the responsibility of the office sitting in their laps.
Yeah, and we also got to piece this all together because it's not just about this Milwaukee Circuit Court judge, but even just in recent days, just this past Friday, Newark Mayor Ras Baraka was paying a visit to a detention center in his city, along with sitting members of Congress. And of all people, Mayor Baraka was detained by ICE, and he was held for some time before he was let go. Just yesterday, we spoke to his sister, our very own Dominique Baraka de Prima, right here about the matter. His wife saying on the record that she believed that he was targeted. What do you make of that? And how do you think Democratic mayors, particularly Democratic Black mayors across the country, what do you think they should make of it?
Well, not even just Democratic Black mayors, because what happens with Ras Baraka right now is particularly important because he is in a very heated race for governor of New Jersey, of the state of New Jersey. And, he would join Wes Moore as, I believe, the only Black governors of any of the 50 states across the country. And the gubernatorial position has been particularly challenging for Black candidates. When you go back and think about, there's a classic term, the Bradley effect, named after famed LA Mayor Tom Bradley, who was incredibly successful at seeking election and re-election in Los Angeles. It was when he sought the highest office of the state of California, the governor's office. That's when suddenly his campaign became so racialized that it became impossible, for him to be electorally successful. And so you fast forward a few decades and you wonder if the Bradley effect is happening right here before our eyes with Mayor Ras Baraka.
Well, shifting away from the potential electoral success of Newark Mayor Ras Baraka, who, as you mentioned, is running for governor of New Jersey. Let's talk about the potential for legislative success. The Washington Post reporting on what's in the Trump and Republicans' giant tax and immigration bill. There's a lot in it. I know we've talked a lot about the nearly $800 billion in projected cuts to Medicaid, in which case we're seeing groups like St. John's Community Health, among others, that are fighting back and fighting vigorously. I think Families USA has a campaign that's going. This would essentially extend the 2017 Trump tax cut. It would, as I mentioned earlier, make cuts to Medicaid. It would make states pay for SNAP. That's the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, formerly known as food stamps. It would increase the child tax credit, which folks typically support in a bipartisan way, but it would impose new taxes on colleges and universities. Currently, law imposes about 1.4% tax on these institutions. It would tax them at varying rates based on their endowment size. And so if you have an endowment size of at least $2 billion, there'll be 21% tax rate. That's a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, this proposal is a lot more complicated than what meets the eye. And so, traditionally, these conversations around federal budgets have been, especially over the last 20 years, have just been pretty much partisan fights. You pretty much know Republicans are looking to cut spending. Democrats are looking to protect programs, if not increase spending for programs that protect everyday Americans, and especially our most vulnerable. And so, but what we're seeing here is not just, this isn't just a Republican bill proposal. This is a MAGA proposal, right? And what MAGA is interested in is cutting across the board, even programs that Republicans support. And the only areas where we're really seeing increased investment, you mentioned the slight increase to the child tax credit. But the major areas where we're seeing spending investment are beefing up border protection and cybersecurity for, again, also bolstering protection at the border. And then the big one is continuing, you mentioned, Dr. Q, those gigantic tax cuts for the wealthy, that would be happening essentially on taxpayer dollars, on the taxpayer's dime. And so, this isn't just about fiscal austerity. This is about executing a very clear political agenda of, we want to spend more money to keep people out of the country than we do actually supporting the people who live here. I mean, this is insane.
And we're also not even talking enough about how this is a major transfer of wealth. Essentially, if you believe that health is wealth, right, then we are transferring our wealth to the richest Americans who don't need it. Billionaires, multimillionaires are going to get huge tax breaks, but at what expense? If the very folks that are working in your companies, in your factories, the very people who are producing the knowledge that you are monetizing, right? If those people are not well, if those folks are not supported, right, then this experiment may not end so well for us. I just want to also point out, Dr. Collins, that there are a few components of this proposed bill that I think are generating sort of widespread support across the aisle. So, for example, no tax on tips. We know that President Trump, then candidate Trump, campaigned pretty heavily on ending taxes on tips, and now that policy is in the bill. No tax on overtime. No tax on car loan interest. These are all fairly popular things for, working class folks. How are Democrats, or how should Democrats communicate this so as to make sure that their base isn't duped into a deal that over the long run will benefit the rich far more than the working class in this country.
Well, by emphasizing just how much the wealthiest Americans stand to benefit from this budget proposal relative to the working class Americans, and this has kind of been Trump's sort of some magic trick, is that he waves these sometimes symbolic and sometimes policy related gestures in our faces to suggest that he cares about the everyday working person. But then you look at the actual totality of his policy behavior, and it's always shoving more and more money to his rich buddies. Like the top 1% continues to amass more and more wealth under the Trump administration. We saw it happen during the first Trump administration in from 2016 to 2020, where I believe the wealth amongst the top 1% almost doubled just within that period of his presidency. And he's looking to do that again, making sure that they do one of his favorite things, not paying taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Right? What does it mean if the federal government gives us a few crumbs, if the wealthy are sitting around throwing around loaves of bread that they can't even eat? So we got to stay focused on where the money is going, who is actually winning from this federal budget proposal.
I think it's a spot on analogy. It's also worth noting that the Republicans in the House intend to repeal Biden's student loan forgiveness. The legislation would save $295 billion over 10 years by repealing Biden's student loan forgiveness program and making other changes to loan repayments. And so this bill is not just about taxes. It's not just about cuts to Medicaid, but it is really a new world order when it comes to our tax code, when it comes to picking winners and losers in our economy. And folks need to pay attention. We're going to dig even deeper beyond the headlines, attempting to make it make sense. Our guest this hour is Dr. Jonathan E. Collins. He's an assistant professor of political science and education at Columbia University. More with him when we come forward. You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
The audience is listening, thought-provoking, eye-opening, heart-rendering. This is where authentic voices meet powerful discussions on culture, community, and change. This is where Black voices matter. He's breaking boundaries, amplifying diverse perspectives, and tackling the issues that matter most to you. You're inside A More Perfect Union with Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. African-American Judge Monique Richardson denied bail for 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, the suspect in last month's Florida State University mass shooting. Eichner, who appeared remotely after surgery, was ordered by the judge not to contact victims.
No contact means you can't call, write, text, email, can't contact on social media, and you can't ask anyone to contact those individuals for you.
He faces 2 counts of murder and 7 of attempted murder. Virginia Governor Glenn Youngkin vetoed a bill that would have let students use African-American history to meet graduation requirements. The bill aimed to give families more choice, but Youngkin's office says the class is still available as an elective. And a new Washington state law lets property owners buy back land taken by school districts if it is not used. Inspired by John Huston's Black family who lost their land in the 1960s under threat of eminent domain, the law aims to address past injustices. Get BIN News Now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Right now, there are young people across the world facing a tough choice: continue their dream of education or drop out to help their family put food on the table. You can help change their future in a single moment. See how far your support can go at unbound.org.
Is this the time? This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
The Rams and Chargers are part of the NFL schedule this season for international games. The Rams will play Jacksonville in London on October 19th. The Chargers will play their regular season opener on September 7th in Sao Paulo, Brazil. The NFL will name the Chargers' opponent on Wednesday when the league announces the complete schedule for the 2025 season. Congratulations to Morgan State defensive lineman Elijah Williams, the Defensive Player of the Year last season in the HBCU MEAC Conference. Williams was signed by the Minnesota Vikings as a free agent and will be at their training camp this summer. Williams, a native of Jersey City, New Jersey, was not selected in last month's NFL draft. The Vikings invited Williams to their minicamp for rookies this past weekend, and he made a strong impression. Good luck to Williams in the Vikings training camp. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
At the tone, please record your message.
You ready? Drop it! Mr. Tavis Smiley, preach it. Thank you, man. Politics in this country is crazy. You put things in perspective that even I didn't. The right is playing fast and loose with facts and scapegoating everyone under the sun, especially black and brown people. As a white man, I do not agree with this, and I am on my black and brown brothers and sisters' side. Fight the good fight. You know that I am part of the resistance. Let's fight the power.
Our freedom of speech is freedom of death. We got to fight the powers that be.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
Nearly 7 million Americans aged 65 and older are living with Alzheimer's disease, also known as AD, a type of dementia that affects memory, thinking, and behavior, making everyday tasks challenging. But did you know that Black adults aged 65 and older are twice as likely as white adults to develop AD? There are things you can do to help reduce your risk for developing AD. Managing conditions like diabetes and high blood pressure is crucial. Staying physically active, maintaining social connections, eating a healthy diet, and keeping your mind engaged with activities like reading or puzzles can all contribute to brain health. It's also important to recognize some common signs and symptoms of early AD, such as forgetfulness that causes problems with everyday life, asking the same question a few times in a row, and difficulty concentrating on basic tasks. If you see these signs in yourself or a loved one, don't wait. Early diagnosis and intervention are key to managing AD effectively. To learn more about AD and a potential treatment option, visit treatallzearly.com. That's treatallzearly.com. This message is brought to you by AZI.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
Now back to building a more perfect union on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and he is Dr. Jonathan E. Collins. He's assistant professor of political science and education at Columbia University. And he's here with us sort of digging through some of the trending national headlines, helping us make it make sense. We've been talking at length about this budget that is making its way through the House of Representatives through a process called reconciliation, where they can essentially pass this enormous bill, this gigantic bill with a simple majority in both the House and the Senate. And you only get one shot to do that each Congress. And, you know, they're using that one shot to deliver the tax cuts for the rich that then candidate Trump promised on the campaign trail. They're also using it to deliver on immigration, but that's not it. You know, there are a number of promises that were made on the campaign trail that are peppered in this bill, and I want to thank everybody who is listening to us on your devices. You're listening to us in drive time as you are on the highways and byways, but also for the folks that are streaming us live on YouTube. Morris Phillips, who is one of the old faithful who stays in a More Perfect group chat. We appreciate you putting your perspective in there. Reminding us that this campaign around privatization of public properties, how it's a worldwide campaign. I definitely hear you there. He also mentioned that he thought judges got impeached, not arrested. Dr. Collins, this is a major turn of events.
This is, judges are impeached for their judicial actions. Judge Duggan is being treated as a civilian for acts that happened outside of her judicial duties. And so, we're seeing the sort of splitting of hairs there, but technically, yes, you're correct. In most instances where we see a judge under trial here, it's usually an impeachment trial for not executing their duties properly. But I think this is a sign of just how chaotic of a time that we're living in. And I think this budget proposal and this budget idea really captures that. I mean, there's just some really weird and quirky things that are happening here, and it's weird and quirky on the surface, but then when you really dive into it, it's just like heartbreaking. They're cutting funding for heating. Mm-hmm. Heating, and you look at as energy costs have been rising, and it's becoming more and more challenging for folks, especially in these climate areas. I know in LA, heating isn't as much of a concern there, but of course you have a different environmental concern. And so anything that you're doing related to, heating and cooling assistance, we're seeing a $4 billion program being eliminated there. You're talking about the continuing assault on the Department of Education, removing, I think, $12 billion of funding from, $12 billion of funding from the U.S. Department of Education. You're talking about, divesting from, Medicare and Medicaid, although, they continue to give lip service to the idea that that's not sort of the case, but they're slashing every other social program. They're also slashing other sort of healthcare related programs. So they're taking money from the CDC. They're, especially funding for programs that are focused on HIV/AIDS prevention. They're taking money for programs that are focused on maternal health.
And might I add, they're taking money from the things that really don't cost us that much. When you think of our federal budget, about 60% of it, about 2/3 of it is mandatory spending. It's on autopilot, right? And then there's about 20 to 25% of the budget that's really our discretionary budget, right? And so when you see members of Congress, fighting to fund this or cut this, more often than not, they're talking about the discretionary budget, that smaller pool of dollars.
That's right.
And then about 12% of the budget is it's really interest on money that we borrowed.
Right.
That makes up the federal budget, right? That's the Schoolhouse Rock version in 25 seconds or so. And we'll continue to dig deeper as this bill continues to make its way through the House of Representatives. But it should say something that they released some of the text of this bill in the late night hours on Sunday.
Yeah.
And whenever Congress releases the text of anything in the late night hours, we may want to keep one eye open.
Yeah. Yeah. It's clearly something that they don't really want us to see. And, at least this time when something leaks, it's text from a bill and not military plans being leaked via text message.
Just today. I tomorrow, all bets are off. But talking about, things getting out that maybe people don't want to know. There's been a lot of buzz about this book that's coming out called Original Sin by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson. And in an exclusive published by Axios, Alex Thompson says that Biden aides discussed using a wheelchair if he were reelected. In this new book, they allege that Joe Biden's physical deterioration was so severe in 2023 and 2024 that advisors privately discussed the possibility that he'd need to use a wheelchair if he won re-election. Now, listen, people are going to write their tell-all books. Yeah. People are going to share their point of views, their reflections. I understand that they interviewed about 200 sources for this book. And so, that's seriously sourced information. But Dr. Collins, given the state of the world, given what's at stake for the most vulnerable among us, seeing the Fourth Estate, seeing the media sort of fawn over this story, seeing Democrats sort of relitigate what led to the 2024 election loss, is this necessary in order for Democrats to be able to rebuild and fight back all at the same time?
It's not necessary at all. It's quite disrespectful to President Joe Biden, who people seem to forget was an incredibly effective president. And there's so much made about the final fourth quarter of his presidency that we forget what it was like when he stepped into office. America was crumbling. We had gone through a pandemic where none of us, we were all trapped inside. The economy was in shambles. Nobody was able to go to work. We were unsure whether or not we would actually be able to continue to have jobs, employment, what businesses were going to look like, what real estate, or especially commercial property. We had so many questions about the future of American society and as sort of the American economy moving forward. And Joe Biden stepped in and he righted the ship. And he passed one of the most important economic investment plans that we've seen in modern American history. He got people back to work. He got the economy rolling again. He created one of the most diverse federal cabinets that we've seen in American history. He diversified the judiciary. He made us closer to the quote unquote more perfect union that we've been in pursuit of.
Yeah, and just hearing you just sort of off the cuff, just sort of share the things that come to mind. I'm sure if we have more time, you could lay out so many other things that President Biden was able to accomplish. But I mean, as somebody who used to be an advocate for senior issues or on senior issues, it really bugs me that what do you expect? He's old. He's old, right? And being old, being an elder, shouldn't be something that we disparage, right? Even he was the first to admit that I don't move the way I used to move. I'm not a young guy anymore. I think, we live in a culture that worships at the fountain of youth, right? We knew he was going to be an old president when he was elected in 2020.
Right.
And then folks turn around and act surprised that, oh, why is he moving slower? And why might it take him more time to, communicate this? Or why is his recall maybe a little bit slower, right? And part of what we're hearing from some of the Biden spokespeople is show us evidence that America was ever endangered during his presidency. Show evidence that the national security of this country was compromised because Joe Biden wasn't up for the job, right? And so there's something about this, Dr. Collins, that just feels gratuitous to me, right? Again, all the power to people who share their stories and their hot takes and what went wrong, as they should. But it just seems like compared to the moment that we find ourselves in, this looking in the rearview mirror, it doesn't seem healthy. It seems way too gratuitous, and something about it just feels nasty. That this guy's 82 years old. He didn't just serve as president; he served in the Senate, for a long time, and maybe he did the best he could. And if his best wasn't good enough, then, guess what? We got to make a different choice, and a number of people did. Right?
There's definitely a major issue with how we're sort of talking about and addressing our octogenarian brothers and sisters in the situation, right? Like the ageism that Biden was running up against. You saw it through the campaign. He was essentially like laughed at and mocked and turned into memes for some of the experiences that he just had as an elderly person. And there's no evidence that being of his age made him incapable of doing the job. I mean, even the idea of, even if he did need a wheelchair, guess what? FDR spent his entire, last presidency, his last term in a wheelchair. And guess what? He's remembered as one of the greatest American presidents in the history of this country. And so, Biden has become a punching bag for a lot of pundits and a lot of people in the media who want to sort of like punch down at the Democrats during a time of weakness and low opportunity, but none of it adds up. Donald Trump is about the same age as Joe Biden.
And he's over there in the Middle East falling asleep during meetings. But guess what? Dr. Collins? Nobody's leading with that story.
No.
Nobody's leading with the story that the sitting president of the United States today was in the Middle East meeting with our allies there, and he's fallen asleep in meetings. But there's no story saying, Donald Trump is too old, Donald Trump is unfit for the job, right? I've been at press conferences at the White House, with the current president, covering the current president, and when he goes off on tangents, when he is going on and on and on and on, nobody raises a question as to his mental wellness, his mental faculties, his ability to focus. Though nobody say the president has ADHD, but with Joe Biden, everybody was a doctor. Everybody was diagnosing him as, he has dementia, he has Alzheimer's, he has this. And so I'm just saying, if that's the analysis that you're bringing, then bring that analysis to every president.
Right. Let's just be consistent. Let's hold everybody to the same standard. Trump can't even remember the people on his own cabinet. Just be consistent. If we want a certain type of performance from our president on the podium, okay, I can get with that. But that standard has to be consistently applied across presidents. And it looks like, again, they just want a reason to beat up on Joe Biden because the Democrats didn't win the presidential election. This is to the victor go the spoils. And in this case, the spoils is this benefit of doubt of one's mental ability and faculty that is completely unwarranted.
That's right. And listen, I think no president is above critique, right? And we could sit here and we could do a deep dive critique on the Biden presidency, right? On the Obama presidency, on the Bush presidency. So this is not about saying, wow, you shouldn't critique him, right? Because he's an older president. But this is like, okay, let's be fair in our critique, right? And let's make sure that we're applying that same critique to the current president.
Yeah, that's all we're asking. Just be consistent. And honestly, why does it matter at this point? Right.
It matters because people are selling books. People trying to sell that book.
That's the only reason.
That's why they're trying to sell that book. And look,
in 20
if that is what you're doing, then do your thing. But I'm just saying, that's somebody's husband, that's somebody's father, that's somebody's grandfather, that was a public servant, that's somebody who did the best he could. It's not like Joe Biden went and bankrupted the country.
Yeah.
It's not like and painting him out to be Weekend at Bernie's in the White House. Right? Because that's Dr. Collins, correct me if I'm wrong, but all of the coverage that I have seen about this book, Original Sin, and the chatter that I've heard here in Washington and beyond, that's ultimately, the impression that it appears we're being left with is that President Biden, it was Weekend at Bernie's. the White House edition.
Yeah, I mean, even the title, Original Sin, is like, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? And it just feels like, honestly, it feels like it's a clout chase. Like you know that you can say something about President Biden, and it's a president, and it's gonna garner you a certain kind of like recognition, a certain kind of clout, clicks, views, book purchases. I hope it works out. I hope it works out, but I also hope it was worth it, and I don't think it will be. There's nothing that we gain from punching on Joe Biden at this point. There's nothing to be gained there. He did a great job. He could be critiqued for some things that maybe he didn't do as president, for sure.
Dr. Collins, stay right there. When we come forward, ABC News is reporting that a small nodule has been found in Joe Biden's prostate during a recent physical. A small nodule was found in the former president's prostate after a routine physical exam. This is according to a spokesperson. A small nodule, it can mean a wide range of things and will require further testing to understand the underlying issue. It's too early to say if it's a benign lump caused by inflammation or something more serious. But when we come forward, in light of this news that has just come out while we've been on the air, Dr. Collins, I want to get your hot take on how this might impact the Biden legacy, at least in the short term, how people talk about the Biden legacy when we come forward. You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
Striving to make America a nation as good as its promise. This is A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
I feel so alone.
I'm embarrassed to talk about it.
How can I help my kid if I can't help myself?
I can't remember when I wasn't stressed.
I don't like
inside.
When you feel overwhelmed by your thoughts and emotions, it's okay to get help. You are not alone. CalHope is here for you with free, safe, and confidential mental health resources for youth, young adults, families, and you. Find support now at calhope.org.
JP Morgan Chase offers tips for the local business owners in 2025. Small business landscape is ever changing, and the Los Angeles market is no exception. A startup or legacy business, revisiting your mission statement and recalibrating offerings can renew opportunities for growth and innovations. Programs like Chase for Business Coaching for Impact gives entrepreneurs access to expert guidance, helping you streamline operations, strategize your growth, and navigate complex challenges. Businesses with a clear sense of purpose can navigate any challenge effectively, but also build stronger customer loyalty. Visit chase.com/coaching for impact for more information. This segment is sponsored by JP Morgan Chase.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. The Autopsy Initiative provides a second autopsy free of charge for victims' families who have lost their loved ones due to a police-related death. The services offered through the initiative include the completion of a second autopsy, disclosure of preliminary findings, and a final autopsy report. A police-related death is when an individual is harmed by police officers using deadly force, which results in an individual's death. Police-related death includes in-custody deaths, including those that arise during contact with law enforcement officers during arrest, pursuit, booking, transport, or incarceration. The Autopsy Initiative has a team of board-certified pathologists on call. An autopsy request may be completed by anyone with a close relationship with the victim, which may include the victim's spouse, partner, relative, close friend, or lawyer. To request a free second autopsy for a victim of police violence, please visit knowyourrightscamp.com. That's knowyourrightscamp.com. Then click on Autopsy, then click on Request. At KBLA, we believe in justice for victims of police violence. We say their names, and we don't black down. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
We face tragedy, but we don't fall into despair. We continue our work to build A more perfect union.
You're listening to A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580. Dr. Collins, in our remaining minutes, I just shared some breaking news that ABC News is reporting that a small nodule has been found in Joe Biden's prostate during a recent physical. We've been talking about the book Original Sin by Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson that is coming out. That has some not so nice things to say about the president, really alleging that there was a decline that the White House was hiding from we the people. In addition, we've heard the current president speak about his predecessor in mean terms, just to be direct about it. How does this cancer scare, how does it change the way that the current president and other critics of President Biden talk about him and his legacy?
Well, first, I send out my deepest prayers and well wishes to former President Biden and his family, the Biden family. These types of health scares are incredibly scary and challenging and very serious. And it's an important reminder that, as you said earlier, Dr. Q, health is wealth, and we wish nothing but the best for President Biden. Now, what this means potentially for his legacy, first, all prayers and hopes that this is benign, and that this proves to be nothing that has sort of cancerous implications. And from there, it does raise questions about, or it causes us to sort of revisit the fact that actually. Cancer elimination was one of the primary goals set by the Biden administration. So he may or may not remember, toward the end of his term, President Biden started the Moonshot Initiative. And it started with, I think, about $150 million investment in cancer research and cancer treatment. And a lot of the initiatives was targeted specifically towards low-income communities of color, and in areas where we are less likely to see these screenings take place that can detect cancer early. And so it's a bit bittersweet to see, Biden experiencing, what could be a potential sort of scare here, knowing that he was very critical in putting something in motion that helped a lot of people.
Well, our prayers are up for former President Joe Biden. We hope that, again, this is a benign situation, but we'll have to leave it here. Our thanks to Dr. Jonathan E. Collins, Assistant Professor of Political Science and Education at Columbia University. Thank you for joining us here on A More Perfect Union. Help us make it make sense, really digging through these trending national headlines. When we come forward, we're stretching out with Dr. Leo Moore talking about men's health. What a day to talk about men's health. In our next hour, you are listening to and streaming A More Perfect Union on KBLA Talk 1580.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Amber Payton with BIN News Now. African-American Judge Monique Richardson denied bail for 20-year-old Phoenix Eichner, the suspect in last month's Florida State University mass shooting. Eichner, who appeared remotely after surgery, was ordered by the judge not to contact victims.
No contact means you can't call, write, text,